They are complex, transnational, and often anonymous, emerging as cyber warfare, disinformation campaigns, and the expanding influence of non-state actors. Our final panel discussion will explore ways to build resilient, contextually grounded systems that place peacebuilding at their core. Please welcome Moussa Mara, former Prime Minister of Mali, John Griffith Spielman, former Lieutenant General and Head of the Security and Defense Studies at Athena Labs Foundation in Chile, Nicholas Naquin, Visiting Fellow at the Danube Institute in Hungary, Saba Rada, Head of the Department for Security Policy and Non-Proliferation at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Hungary, and this session will be moderated by Peter Shikloshi, Senior Research Fellow and Coordinator of the Strong Europe Research Center at the Hungarian Institute of International Affairs.
Hello.
I'm not sure that it's you.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's
Nothing like
So it's always a pleasure to be the last panel in front of the die-hard audience who are interested in these issues. Our topic is rethinking the global security architecture. I'm not sure that there is such a thing or there has ever been such a thing as a global security architecture, but I don't want to go into a theoretical debate about that. I would like to keep our discussion on more practical ground. One thing is very clear, that as we have heard today from many, including Professor Meisheimer, that the unipolar moment or world order is over, and we are in a very clear shift towards something else. Some say it's a multipolar world order. Others say that it will be a new bipolarity between the United States and China, or the West more broadly and China. We will see. But one thing is clear, the world has to find, and everybody in the world has to find, his or her place in these changing and new world order. First of all, I would like to ask Prime Minister, former Prime Minister of Mali, where do you see Africa's place in this changing world, especially Northern Africa or North Africa's place?
Thank you. I would like first to thank the organizer of this important meeting, and especially in Budapest. And coming to your question, if you look at Africa, Africa is a continent of 54 countries, 54 different contexts, different environments. You talked about the northern part of Africa, what we called Maghreb, from Egypt to Morocco. And the western part, we have 15 countries, among them my own country, Mali. There's different other parts. There is different issues linked to security. But what is common is the African countries and the African organization like African Union talking about multilateralism, international security architecture. The first thing is to be present on the table, and especially in the Security Council of the United Nations. That is where the global issues are being managed by the international countries and the global powers. And it is usually between the 5 permanent members with their veto rights and the others. And Africa always wants to be part of it and to be present on the Security Council and to be present on the members who has the permanent site. This is the first issue, to be part of the decision makers. The second issue is about the peacekeeping organizations. Africa hosts the most important part of the peacekeeping organization, the peacekeeping mission, and one was in Mali only a few years ago. We have a peacekeeping organization mission in the eastern part of Africa, one in DRC, this is the central part of Africa, and one other in the southern part, if I remain. And the peacekeeping mission presents some failures. They are really not able to solve the problem, and they stay for a long time. In my country, it was maybe 13 years. Ivory Coast, near of 20 years. They are still present in DRC. This is more than 22 years. Without solving the problem of security. This is also one issue. Africa is trying to contribute and to discuss with the United Nations in order to find the right way to solve really the security issues by the peacekeeping mission of the United Nations. This is the second issue. The third is the issue about migration. Africa is composed by a majority of countries which are departure countries, and the migration issue is now a real big issue. If you look at in US now, what is going on there, in Europe also, and Africa is really focused on that also. And the last one, for to starting and to answer the question, the last one is how to gather African countries together to go on one way. If the case of security or development and other issues, how to we can be united, more united, to take with the same voice. This is also one issue, but it is an issue which depend on us, and now it is not really solved. I would like to start maybe by the fourth, and during the session we'll talk about the other issues.
Thank you very much, and I intend to return to the question of migration back, because others might also contribute. But then, if I understood you correctly, we can say that there are not only forever wars, but there are also forever peacekeeping missions, and we very well know that phenomenon. Basically the same question to our general from Chile, from South America. Henry Kissinger once said, allegedly said, that the geopolitical significance of South America is like a dagger pointed towards the heart of Antarctica. Which is quite a rude way of formulating that. What is your opinion about South America's role and position in this changing world?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the Hungarian Institute of International Affairs, and second to the Observer Research Foundation. Thank you for the invitation. I would say that the vision in Latin America today regarding the Antarctic continent is a current and very important issue In fact, we as a Chilean, we consider that we are a tricontinental country. And when we perceive that we are a tricontinental, why? Well, first of all, we belong to Latin America, of course. But second one, we have a projection to the Asia Pacific. We do have Easter Island, and because of the position of Easter Island, we have a geopolitical projection to that international area. And I have to say that we have a pioneer of geopolitics. I am talking about 1930. It was the General Ramon Caña Montalva who said that the axis, the geopolitical axis, was moving, I am talking about at the beginning of the 20th century, was moving from a European, from a Mediterranean European to the Asia Pacific. I mean, the geopolitics has played a very important role. And also, it is the same character who said that we should claim a portion of the Antarctic officially. That's why Chile, in 1947, established for a decree of law, of course, for the country, that we claim sovereignty between the 53 degrees and the 90 degrees, so the Antarctica. But we share that portion with the Argentinian and with the British too. That means that this is a problem that we have to solve in the coming decades, or in the coming years. But we're observing regarding Antarctica. It is a huge continent. I was, in fact, in January in the South Pole. We have the opportunity to go there. And you can see that there is a lot of things happening there. The Chinese are developing more stations, they said, that are for scientific purpose. And, but not only that, because there is a lot of activity, and we perceive also that the competition and confrontation that currently is happening at a global order, at a global level, it's going to be there very soon, because of the resources that are there, because of the position, and also because it's a wonderful place to explore the space, the submarine cables, and lately we have been even received the visit of many different actors from Russia, among them the Iranian warship have been there. I mean, it is a very interesting geopolitical factor nowadays.
Thank you very much. And now to you, Nicola. We all are following the news, what's going on in the Middle East right now. But there is always something going on in the Middle East. So the Middle East is always in the center of geopolitics, we can say. How do you see the role of the area in this changing world?
Well, in general, I would like to, I can comment about that briefly. I would like to talk a little bit about something slightly more theoretical, if you don't mind, just as framework. Yeah.
You are free to do that.
But I would agree with Witkoff's assessment that if the Middle East can get over these rather useless internecine battles, it would be one of the most prosperous regions and most dynamic regions in the world. And what's happening right now, let's hope that this leads to a positive outcome. We'll see, right? But I wanted to step back, and since this is the last moment, kind of the end of the conference, just to thank the organizers and also the staff and the opportunity to be here. This morning we heard from Professor Mearsheimer and also Bala Shorban about what the good guy, bad guy mentality, or what a realism is in international politics. So I want to talk about the morality of the liberal world order. I don't want to say that the liberal world order is over or that it is finished. I think that sounds suspiciously like the end of history too, and it may come back to haunt us, so let's be careful about that. But let's say it's in retreat. Okay, the liberal world order is being called into question. So in this context, I just want to quote something from Donald Trump to frame the conversation. From a few days ago, I quote him because, in a way, he does embody the zeitgeist, in a, like him or not. And when he was asked about the Iran-Israel conflict, he said, you know, I hope there'll be a deal. It's time for a deal, but maybe they just need to fight it out. Now, this may just sound like a glib comment from Donald Trump, but I think it reveals something profound about changing how we're seeing the morality of the world order and of conflict. So if we look at the liberal world order as we understand it, you know, the morality of that was, I would highlight three elements of that were like moral underpinnings of this, of conflict and how the management of conflict in the liberal world order. The first was just an assumption that war is the worst thing ever in the history of the world. You know, it's just, and that is not a normative human position. I mean, I say this as a former soldier and someone who's been in the military for a good part of my adult life. Not everyone, especially not men, this is not common to see war as the worst thing ever in the history of the world. Some might even describe it as the most seductive thing in the world. So we may be going back to, people are calling into question this idea that war is the worst thing ever in the history of the world. You know, the good guys, bad guys mentality, which I don't need to discuss that more. It was well treated this morning, but also that there are somehow regulated laws of warfare and that encode aspects of post-Christian, but still inspired by Christianity, bourgeois mentality. You might call it the bourgeois way of war. And all of these are being called into question. So I would argue that pacifism as a default is going away. And that's part of what we're seeing with the dismantling of the moral framework to manage conflict or to discuss conflict in the liberal world order. You see that in what Trump said. He said, sometimes you need to fight it out. It's just a legitimate, you know, fighting is a legitimate option to solve problems between states. It's not the only option because you want to make a deal, but it's a legitimate option, right? Another issue is that there are no more good guys and bad guys. And once again, what Donald Trump said, talking about making a deal, you know, he's not calling Iran a monster. He's not calling, you know, Khomeini Satan, which a lot of neocons would. You know, he just says, yeah, we want to make a deal, but, you know, maybe we just need to fight it out. I mean, this is a radically different way of looking at conflict, right? And then last but not least, and something what the Prime Minister just highlighted, there may be no more rules, and there's no one who can really enforce those rules. So, you know, we have MINUSMA in Mali for 13 years, supposed to bring peace. All they brought was more conflict. And you know, the UN, where are they going to step in with Iran and Israel right now? They can do nothing, right? A lot of these, what other organization? The EU? I mean, please, like no one can really intervene in this, and so they're just going to have to fight it out. And what are the rules by which they fight that out? No one really knows, and no one is there to, you know, we're not talking about red lines and, you know, these kind of vague threats that we got before. It's just, you know, they're going to lob missiles at each other and figure out and other things as well, and they're going to figure out where they go next. So, in this context, I just think we should, when we're talking about the collapse or the end of the liberal world order, I would also just ask for some humility here. I mean, some of us may like to see that, or maybe almost gloating about it. You know, people who brought this framework or who, you know, ushered in this liberal world order were people like us who were responding to often tragic and very complex problems. And, you know, when it goes away, it's not all going to be positive. We're going to have some very negative consequences to this that we have to manage. Secondly, that being said, some ideas are really bad and are objectively worse than others, and many aspects that are enthroned in this passé world order, we might call it, is you know, we're objectively like not in conformity with the vast majority of human history and somewhat artificial. So that's the last point. And then I would just say the reality of warfare is, in this context, where the morality behind how we conceive conflict is likely to change. And I would just highlight one example. Throughout, in this whole liberal world order, since the end of the Second World War, insurgency has been the bugbear of great armies. You know, it's always they beat the US in Vietnam. We were just beating the global war on terror in several different contexts. And even the Houthis. I mean, Donald Trump says, I'm going to bring all hell on the Houthis. And frankly, they are I mean, they kind of won that one. I mean, we did a strategic retreat there. So insurgency has always been it's been a winning tactic as long as that moral framework is taken for granted. As that moral framework collapses, insurgency may no longer be a valid tactic. You know, I will give you an example from European history. When Germany was occupying most of Europe, insurgency, for all of the heroic exceptions, was not a big problem. All right? Why? Because they were willing and able to terrorize people more than any insurgent could ever terrorize them. And so they occupied most of Europe, not having a problem with insurgency. In the new morality, we might see that happening in many cases. So I just want to end on that point. That is the big shift I see right now. Like, the moral understanding of conflict is going to change with the passing of this so-called liberal world order or its retreat.
Thank you very much. It was a very interesting take, and although I wanted to keep the discussion in a practical way, but I can't stand not to say a sentence here about as you said, the morality of conflict. If we look at it from the liberal perspective, all these conflicts were fight between good and evil, between white and black. And in a realism, in a realist way of looking at a conflict, it's the fight between interests, basically. Now, if you think about it, if all the conflicts are framed as a fight between good and evil, then there is no real way to compromise, because evil has to be defeated. There's no compromise with evil. It has to be defeated. And so there is no way stopping and making compromises in these kinds of wars. I'm not saying that there are no wars which are fought between good and evil. There might be. But if you look at conflicts from this realist perspective, then it's easier to make compromise, and consequently, it's easier to stop killing, make a compromise, and move on, however hard that might be in the practical terms. But let me now give the floor to our Hungarian practicing diplomat here, who is responsible in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for security policy matters. What's the Hungarian perspective of Hungary and the region of ours in this new, quickly forming new international order?
Thank you very much. Europe arrived to the point and the moment of self-redefinition, we have to say that. In the last 35 years, and especially coming from Hungary, after the Cold War, we enjoyed a new environment around us. We enjoyed the fact that we started to relive our European identity. So our main issue, our main goal was to join the European architecture. It's not a one, and Hungary really much focused on the notion of cooperation. In 1994, it's not a wonder that the OSCE, the Organization for Security Cooperation in Europe, was actually established here in Budapest. That was the basis of the European security architecture, I would say, which still exists, and I have to say it still has a very important role because of the fact that that is the only European international organization where we have all the parties present in one room and where actually they talk to each other, including Russia. Secondly, I wanted to say that Hungary was moving forward in the path of joining the Euro-Atlantic and the European different organizations. In 1999, we joined the NATO, and in 2004, we joined the European Union. And in this whole structure, we felt the peace dividend, what is around us, coming from NATO, coming from the bigger armies around us. So we were not forced anymore to have a military structure in Hungary. We were not forced to modernize. We were not forced to have our own defense because it was a collective defense protecting us. So this is the whole idea. But then the reality came very strongly in the 2000s, and we saw more and more new types of threats on Hungary, on Europe. These new types of threats came, more and more terrorist attacks arrived, not only in the United States, not only in other parts, but in the heart of Europe. Then we saw different threat, different challenge coming, waves of illegal migration arrived, and we really needed to redefine the fact that what is security and stability in Europe. And finally, when we believed the fact that there is no more conventional war in Europe, then the war in Ukraine started, and actually there was a war against right next to our borders. And in this structure, we just realized the fact that even though we were enjoying the peace dividend, we were enjoying relative stability and security all around us, we forgot to redefine these basic definitions. So this is the moment why I'm saying that, that we are there, because in the last few months, as I could say, also in the European Union and also in the NATO, there are different programs and different discussions to make these new definitions. New security threats and new challenges are actually discussed, also in NATO format, also in European Union format, that we try to find solutions to these new threats. Just to mention a few examples, more and more cyber threats, more and more hybrid challenges are arriving to Europe. So the European Union, for example, started to discuss these issues, and you just see more and more announcements from the EAS, from Kaja Kallas, or from the President of the European Commission, that we have a new strategy on European preparedness, on resilience, on fighting new security challenges. On the other hand, also in NATO, we realized, and this was also coming from, let's say, a demand from our American allies, that Europe is not really putting in its weight in its own defense. So there was a request from the new American administration that actually we have to revisit our commitments for our defense spending, which actually thematized, and it's not basically the main question in whole Europe, to redefine the European pillar of our collective defense in the whole NATO alliance. This is the main question. This is going to be the main question next week in The Hague, where is the NATO summit will take place. How and until when can every ally commit to raise its defense spendings in the upcoming period? So there is the new security environment around Europe. New security threats are actually above us, and in this moment we try our best to find solutions and find definitions to these new threats. And also, I studied from the OSCE, European Structure of Security. It still exists, and we believe that, of course, we need at least a ceasefire or the end of the conflict in Ukraine, but we still believe that OSCE can be the future of a new European security structure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, in our second round of discussion, all of us here represent a region in the world, and all of our regions experienced during our history various kind of attempts to influence our regions. external powers competed for having a higher influence on our regions. Mr. Prime Minister, we know in Africa previously it were the European powers who fought for this kind of influence. Nowadays, one can say that the Chinese are very, or became very influential in Africa. Some might say that the US also has some influence. Others might say that the US does not have enough influence right now in Africa, but should try to have more in the future. How do you see these outside influences, especially when with the technological change, new materials are gaining extra importance, which in the past did not matter that much, but nowadays they form the basis of basically technological development?
You are right to say the big powers always want to be involved in elsewhere activities and elsewhere economy, and especially it is the case in Africa. You know, everyone here, we know as much as Africa richer in terms of material resources, oil and gas, but also gold, diamonds, and rare earth, and different materials. That's why also we can see a lot of actors, economical actors first, starting by Chinese, Europeans, and even US. It is sure when it comes to US, their presence is by far littler than what Chinese are doing in Africa. But it's also the situation is more complex that we can see it. If we look at some countries specifically, we can see a huge presence of US there. It is the case on central part of Africa, DRC, Angola, with the huge investment about the Lobito, what we say Lobito corridor. But in the world, Chinese are by far the main contributor in Africa in terms of trade. In terms of investment, this is more complex. We have a more presence of European companies due to the story and due to the historical relationship we have had with Europe. That means simply the situation is more complex, but every country, and it is the case of every region in Africa, we are all available to work with whoever is available to be with us. This is something we can reiterate it. In terms of security, the situation is a bit different. The presence of the international players, if you look at, for example, China has only one military base in Africa, based in Djibouti, and they are also involved to the United Nations peacekeeping missions. We have some Chinese soldiers on that. This is only presence in the security way of China in Africa. This is not the case of Europe and Russia. Russia also is really present. If I look at my own country, the presence of the Russia soldiers and the Russia security actors is real in our zone, the Sahelian zone, and elsewhere in Africa. European also, for the former colonizers, like France, like UK, they have some presence in some different parts of Africa. To summarize, the situation is complex, is evolving. It depends on which country is considered. But all of these actors are present in different ways, and it also depends on the orientation, the strategical orientation of the different big players. If we take the example of US now, the situation in US is not only to go elsewhere, but is to focus on ourselves and to keep the borders closed. This is not really open to go in Africa, to invest in Africa. But the situation should change if US want really to be present in Africa. This is the thing I would like maybe to emphasize on. The situation here is complex, but all of African countries are open, wanted to have more choices, to work with different players, and not only to be head with one player. This was the case in the colonization period and maybe the first decade of our independence period. Now the situation is more open, is more complex, and that shows different opportunities for the big players, even for the middle players like Turkey and countries like India, like Brazil, which also are present and which try through their companies to be more involved in Africa.
But can the Africans benefit enough from these heightened interest in them?
For sure, Africa is looked like only a field of mineral resources. And it's up to African states, to African organizations to change that, to be more smart and to be more involved in partnership, to be more partners, even middle and long-term partners, than only raw material providers. I think it's up to Africans to do that. If Africa and the African leaders remain only focused on finance, get from the raw material, Africa will stay on this stage. It depends on our leadership, it depends on our organization, our different states, to be more smart, to be more focused on our strategical interests, and to make our partner more involved in industrialization and to add value activities. This is up to Africa.
I see. Thank you very much. From the distance, it looks like that South America is in somewhat a similar situation. Is it?
Well, during and after the Second World War, of course, the U.S. was the main influence. I have to say that we have a treaty of collective security that was settled in 1947, before NATO, collective security, and is in place today, and which consider, by the way, Antarctica too, between the 24 to 90 degrees. But the U.S. was the main actor, was the country, I would say, in charge of our external security. The problem is that today, the main problem of Latin America, we have two main problems in Latin America in general. The first is the action of criminal organization plus narco-traffic, which is affecting the entire continent. We have a non-traditional security threat, which is very important. 9.5 Chileans consider that the main threat, it is this one, narco-traffic and criminal organization. But also we have another problem. And in my humble opinion, the main problem is the weaknesses of the state as a form of political organization. Our state are suffering from different crises, crisis of governability, crisis of institution, crisis of security, crisis of corruption. I mean, how we are going to try to solve this security problem is the state as a form of political organization is so weak. I mean, we should be able to do something about it. I have no doubt that part of the solution in Latin America is through cooperation, because at the end of the day, if we are suffering transnational threat, they require multilateral answers. But Latin America is a region of the world in which we do have traditional threat also, non-traditional one. There is a lot. It's highly symmetrical continent. We don't have integration at the level of, I would say, infrastructure. We don't have integration at the level of energy. But always, Latin America in general or South America are thinking in how to integrate the region at the political level. But we don't have the basis in which to support that, you know? And now, the current geopolitical situation is that the main actor in the region are, of course, China. China is very active in the Antarctic. China has in Argentina, a station to monitor satellites in which not even the Argentinians could get into the facilities. They signed an agreement with Chile in order to have in the north of Chile another remote station, but at the moment the government, rejected that. They built a port in Peru. They are building a huge infrastructure, the Chinese in the region, in order to dispute in a certain way, not only the influence, but also to obtain the important resources that are in the region. I mean, I'm talking about lithium, rare earth, uranium, green hydrogen, among others. That's the tragedy of Latin America. It is rich in natural resources, but very poor in, I would say, in to have a state as a political form of organization because of the weaknesses of the state. We should be able to help the state to recover national unity, national cohesion, but also be responsible for provide security, development, and well-being to the citizens. That's the key demand that at the moment many people in Latin America is asking to the government.
Thank you very much. Looking at South America from this geographical location for Central Europe, South America looks like being or having been divided between two European powers, and then later on 3 other European powers arrived. But after that, with the Monroe Doctrine, it became the backyard of the United States. Yeah. And the United States basically took it for granted for a very long time.
Sure.
Of course, the Soviets had interference there as well. But basically, the US took it for granted. And nowadays, it looks like that you find Chinese everywhere. So the Chinese influence became very profound. Now, am I correct that in saying that Mr. Trump woke up and the Americans woke up to this kind of threat, and they are trying to get back their influence in South America? And basically, their insistence, or his insistence, on regaining the control of the Panama Canal is a part of this strategy, because at least the eastern part of South America for the Chinese is only reachable through the Panama Canal. The western part, of course, is reachable directly. So am I right in that the Americans are now trying to regain their influence?
I would say it's a little bit late, but they are doing that. Not only at the Panama Canal, but also at the Magellan Strait, which belong to Chile, by the way, but to the south of the Drake Pass, Bioceanic Pass too. They are very active now. But I would say that they are active. They want to increase the presence, but not as we Latin American wanted to be. And for many times, we had been waiting for a strategy between the US and the Western Hemisphere, or the Latin America in general. But there is not such a strategy at all. Why, when we ask the American why you don't have a strategy to deal with our region, they said, you know, we have many different problems all over the world, which is true. We have vital problems. You are an important problem. That means that you are not vital, and mean you can wait. And we have been waiting for more than 50 years. In my opinion, the solution should be trying to develop at the regional level. I wouldn't say something hemispheric because it's so larger, but at least at the regional level, let's say the south cone of Latin America, Argentina, Chile, Peru could be to trying to develop some kind of regional, and then trying to expand that to South America in order to have an organization that could solve the problem that require attention, but also that we are not going to solve if we're not able to cooperate among the countries, with or without the United States. But at the moment, yes, they are trying to, especially with Argentina, the Trump administration has been very active. And with Chile, we are strategic partners. You know, the kind of platform or the kind of armed forces that we do have are highly related to the United States.
Thank you. Now, the Middle East, of course, a historic playground of European powers. Later on, very much the battle between the influence of the United States and the Soviet Union back then. Now China arrived, again China arrived as a foreign influencer. How do you see the influence of China in the Middle East?
Well, so October 7th, before the attacks, I think most Israelis were, generally speaking, content to let the status quo go on. I've been living there for about 3 years. I'm not Israeli, so I really can't speak for, for the country itself, but I have been there, I've been observing, and they were willing to go along with the status quo. I think 40% of the people supported a Palestinian state. It was still a possibility at that time. The attacks have changed that radically. I think the percentage who would support a Palestinian state is something at 15 or maybe around that area. And I think I will get to your question, but the most relevant consequence of the October 7th attacks for this audience, it's really two. Number one, I think Europe is out of the Middle East. And the only exception might be Hungary, so I mean, but in general, Europe's out. France, Britain, everyone has traditionally been involved. I mean, to say out completely, no, but they will be perhaps irrevocably downgraded in its influence. I think really all of the lecturing from Europe right now has only reinforced Israel in its position to not to care. And if you want to change its policy, try and invade it. I mean, good luck. It's not going to happen. So I think, I don't see, I mean, if you look what's happening in Israel is bringing back ambassadors. They really have no interest in what Europe has to say. And then the United Nations, which traditionally was an actor, a rather important one there, was tolerated as a hostile entity, but throughout this conflict, it's come to be perceived as basically an enemy element. So it has been also removed from the context, and it will not be coming back. So these are two enormous consequences for the region, and I think they're here to stay for the foreseeable future. There will not be an inroad for the Europeans. Hungary, however, is the exception by focusing on its national traditions and nationalism, which aligns somewhat with the rather late manifestation of nationalism, which is the Zionist movement. They tend to have a natural affinity, so I think Hungary does have some options there. And the United States, it's to be determined how long the partnership between Israel and the United States can last. Israelis were already preparing before Trump's election for a definitive break, in my mind. Had Kamala Harris been elected, it would have taken 5 or 10 years, but they were preparing for that eventuality. With Trump, I think you can extend that time frame a little bit, but the close relationship between Israel and the United States, I think those days are numbered, and it's going to be moving to a more pragmatic relationship, perhaps over this Trump administration, but almost certainly in the next administration, be it a Republican or a Democrat candidate. To get to your question about China, Trump's trip to the Middle East was partly to, manifestly to displace China, or at least to to bring back the love to the Middle East from, as he said, they brought him a fist pump, and he's bringing back the handshake, and trying to bring back, the United States and wrest it from increasing Chinese influence. In Israel itself, they flirted with China a little bit in the 2000s and 2010s. They did not always get the better end of those deals, and they were often burned by it. And so they're increasingly cautious with the Chinese, especially given the Chinese positions when it comes to the current conflict. Now, interestingly, the Chinese have been changing their tune lately, now that Israel has basically emerged from this as a regional powerhouse that is going it solo, more or less. And so they have been changing their tune, and I've heard that they are willing to consider very advantageous possibilities, but I don't think the Israelis will take it. They're very skeptical of the Chinese influence right now. And what they're really worried about is not so much Iran. I think this is it could be a very short-term concern, actually, at this point. It's Turkey. Most Israelis I speak to are terrified of the Turkish presence and of an expanding neo-Ottoman empire. The big question, and they're all over Africa too, as the Prime Minister correctly noted, the big question is this a phenomenon confined to the current Prime Minister who's associated with the Muslim Brotherhood, et cetera, or is it a long-term phenomenon? That is unclear, but there is this element. Israel and Turkey used to have rather close relationships, and now it's rather almost like a spurned, like a love affair gone bad. There's a lot of bad emotion there. And there's also the concern about Syria and in the broader Middle East, Turkey's power, which is exponentially, in my opinion, greater than what Iran could bring to the table. So that's the big concern there. But Europe's out. Hungary, you did a good job to maintain some relations there, so you have some possibilities, but everyone else, I wouldn't, unless you're willing to invade or to go in with a military force, I wouldn't try to bully Israel. Yeah.
Speaking about love affairs and the changing nature of love, what was very interesting lately that a better and better relationship can be built between entities which previously really hated each other, namely Israel and some of the Gulf states. Saudi Arabia, UAE. So that kind of better and better relationship can lead to a more stable region, or can it? Especially if, in case, sometime in the near or distant future, the Iranians' threat can be taken out. What do you think about it?
Broadly speaking, there's a great opportunity right now. If we'll see what happens with this conflict, but you've seen so far that all the Arab states have been on Israel's side, and they've been actively intervening in some respect to either to intercept drones or to help in other ways with intelligence sharing. So it is. This is a relationship that increasingly is based on a shared vision for the future. Saudi Arabia, I don't think will normalize anytime soon for a variety of reasons, but that ship sailed with the October 7th attacks, and it was obviously one of the reasons behind that attack. But at this point, I don't think that's a possibility in the foreseeable future. However, more and more people in Israel are saying, you know what, do we really need normalization? We're flying over the country anyway. We can have economic deals, and Saudi Arabia will go for it. We have informal cooperation. Do we really need to sign a peace treaty? That kind of goes back to what I was saying before about these very kind of bureaucratic proceedings governing everything. And if we don't reach this bureaucratic benchmark of normalization, then somehow we can't trade, or we can't have a relationship that's mutually beneficial. I see things going forward in that direction, more of a partnership that is not normalized with Saudi Arabia. But writ large, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is still something that is, it's a festering wound, and until there's not going to be a solution, but until it is, I always advocate for a timeout, a timeout for, a good 20, 30 years, just freeze everything. Now, this may not be practical, but just take a timeout, calm down, because once again, if you strip away all of the ideology, Palestinians and Israelis at this point have a lot in common. They're interested in the same things, and they could get along quite well and build a quite a successful arrangement, whether it's a country, confederation, whatever. But that's not possible with the bad blood currently there. Over.
Yeah, understand. We won't go into the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We could spend another hour or two. To our Hungarian guest, Hungary, which is very strongly anchored in the Western world, member of the EU, member of NATO, ally of European countries, ally of America. How do you see Hungary in this context? Toward China, how do you see the possibility of Hungary in case there is a worsening relationship between the West and China, or the United States and China?
I go back.
And you have 1 minute and 20 seconds.
I will be very brief. I want to go back to the moment where I started my first round of speech, that Hungary and most of the European nations believe in cooperation. The whole idea of European Union is based on the idea of cooperation. And just speaking about Hungary, because of the lack of time, I have to say that Hungary started about 10 years ago, even though we are a small country. And it's big words that to have the southern and first the eastern and the southern opening of economic cooperation and relations, which not only meant institutional build-up of new embassies and other structures, but also extending our hand and trying to diversify our relations. Even though we are NATO members, even though we are European Union members and most of our trade and economic relations are connected to Europe, at the same time I have to say about the external investments coming to Hungary is not exclusively coming from Europe or United States, but from the Far East. So Chinese, Japanese or Korean investors are very much present in the Hungarian economy. One more thing which is very important to mention, and this is how we look at it. China has a global program, the One Belt, One Road, and Hungary is very much, this program is very much present in Hungary. Just a very, it's under construction, the Budapest-Belgrade railway, which will connect the two capitals, hopefully next year. Of course, it's easier to be in Serbia in this case because they are not a member of the European Union, so they don't have to abide by all the EU standards. So they already managed to open some railway lines. We still have some difficulties in that, but by the new deadlines, we will be ready. So Hungarian economy and European economy is very much connected and interconnected with the Chinese economy, and we cannot forget that fact. Cooperation is the key. So even though China means, and Chinese, I wouldn't say the state, but also Chinese, some actors and individual actors might mean challenge to us, but we have to keep it in balance, cooperation and prudence together. This is how we look at it. Of course, in the European Union and also in NATO, there is discussion how we have to look at China, cooperation, economic partner, or a challenge for the future. But these discussions They are ongoing, and they just started, and we will see how it is. And I almost kept my time as well.
Thank you very much. And with that, I would like to thank our distinguished panelists for their excellent contributions. And please, the audience, join me in applauding our panelists.
Thank you again to our panelists. That wraps up the final panel discussion of the 2025 Budapest Global Dialogue. As we now approach the end of our event, let me invite Samir Saran, President of the Observer Research Foundation, to the stage to reflect on the past 3 days of incredible discussion.
Thank you.